Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey, BTB buddies, I wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon page now so that you can support the show. Check out patreon.com/BTBPC and check out the cool stuff you can get for as little as $2 per month. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks, as always, for listening. Back to the Behind the Bits rapid round. I've got Daniel Steinberg here with me, and he is the creator of LAFFRR and also a stand-up comic. Now, Daniel, how are you doing, first of all? You doing okay?
I'm great, man. Yeah, it couldn't be better.
Great. You came to me with this idea a couple months ago, and I tried it. After I saw it in action, I thought it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we've been meaning to get together for a while, and I'm glad I finally got you on. This is great.
Yeah, you're a huge fan of the idea. I'm still workshopping it, testing it with different comics, and you're definitely one of the early adopters. That's for sure. Definitely. We're either both visionaries or both crazy, because still workshopping it, testing it with different comics, and you're definitely one of the early adopters.
Okay, and that is me.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Messing up my live feed, and that's okay. That's okay. This is what happens when you're 56.
That's what I got to look forward to in 10 years.
Yep. Doesn't get any better. Good. Okay, we're good. And so this LAFFRR idea, first off, let's talk about you doing comedy. How long have you been doing stand-up?
So I've been doing it off and on for, I don't know, about 22 years or so.
Okay.
Off and on, more off than on, unfortunately, in practice, but in theory, I'm a stand-up at heart. And I think I did my first open mic. I must have been 17 years old. I think my dad drove me to a little Days Inn motel lounge where I did an open mic. I remember Lawrence Taylor was in the audience.
Okay.
And, it was a little cheesy place out in the middle of nowhere, but he happened to be in the audience. And then I that was in Rockland County in upstate New York. And I moved to New York when I was 21. And I did all the open mics over there, started make the rounds on the tri-state circuit a little bit, New York, New Jersey. I was doing stand-up towards the mid to late 90s when it was the alternative scene in New York with like Marc Maron, Louis C.K. Jim Gaffigan was actually just starting to break out. Jeff Ross was getting big. And so those were the kind of people that they were like the tier above me. And the people that I was working with at the time, a lot of them are writers now in Hollywood for Conan and Family Guy and a bunch of other shows, Sesame Street, a lot of different shows. Some of them are comics. I think Christian Finnegan I saw has a special on Netflix. He and I used to pass each other through the revolving door and open mics. And then I actually used to hang out with Marc Maron a little bit for about 3 months. I trailed him around the city and just try to worship at his feet to try to pick up what his magic was, because he really flipped the switch for me when I saw him perform for the first time. It was before it was about being funny, and then it was about being yourself and turning that into a funny, like a vehicle for creative self-expression.
Yeah.
It was very powerful. And so I couldn't get enough of it. So I used to follow him around the city, and he was very angry in those days. And I was going
to ask you which area you got.
Yeah. He was sober. He had quit smoking, he quit drinking, but he had a lot of anger in him. I remember I was at the Cellar one night. He wrote about this actually in Vanity Fair. And I remember I was with him that night. I don't know if you'd remember, but he got in a fight with the owner of the Cellar on stage. And then in the middle of the set, he stormed off. And I had basically been sharing cabs with him the whole night, going from set to set. And I had to run after him to get into the cab to go to the next place. And it was really wild. I saw something that I felt was like very real and visceral. And it was cool. And he was connected to the Comedy Store days with Sam Kinison and Bill Hicks and all those guys. And so it was very it was edgy, it was rock and roll, and it was very powerful. And it was really cool. I did that for a couple of years, and then I took a very weird career direction change, and I ended up going to Israel and studying Jewish education, and I stayed there. And when I came back, I'd stayed there almost 7 years. And by the time I came back, I moved to California, and I was in Jewish education, and I still had that bug, and I'd sneak out at night to go to San Francisco, and I'd perform at open mics over there, and really any chance I could get. And then took a bunch of years off and a bunch of years back on again. About 6 or 7 years ago, I started self-producing shows. I got the bug, but I didn't want to do the open mic scene again because I just felt I had graduated from it. So I had a small network of people, maybe 70, 80 people. And I would tell them, hey, I'm doing a show. I wrote up half an hour. We'll have a good time. And I did that a couple times a year for the past 4 or 5 years. I've been doing these self-produced shows and actually making more money than I made back then when I was open micing and doing these little small paid gigs on the weekends.
Yeah.
Now I was making $700-800 a night with people who wanted to see me too. So it was a lot of fun. But the weak link was that I just didn't have a way to prepare to develop my act. I was flying on intuition. I had a lot of sense of what worked from my time when I really hit the open mics 4 or 5 nights a week and really developed my sense of humor, developed my familiarity and comfortability factor audience. But I just couldn't go back to the open mic. Here I am, 40 years old plus and trying to develop an act and going to a dive bar with a sign-up sheet longer than someone's rap sheet. And you get your name on there at 2 a.m. and you're playing to just other comics the whole night. And as your morale just deteriorates, seeing bad comic after bad comic. And you get up there and it's just, you're all out of steam. You're tired. Your family's wondering where you are. You're wondering, am I doing the right thing? And am I living out my childhood dream? And so it was very demoralizing. So I said, I can't do the open mic thing. I have to figure out another way. And a couple of years ago, I came up with the idea of doing Zoom comedy, which, now really is the only comedy there is for the most part. And I had this idea to do this. I would be home. I'd assemble an audience in different places and I would try out my stuff in front of them. And I did it for a couple months, actually. And it was interesting. People didn't want anything to do with it. People thought it was crazy. People thought it was, it wasn't a substitute. You couldn't really get a feel for things working, not working. I abandoned it for a different reason, mainly because of the technical problems with it. I found that the video and the audio environments were very unwieldy. You could have a joke die because of the lagging, the buffering, something that is really dependent upon timing. If you just miss a little bit, then the whole thing implodes. Yeah. So that plus the idea that you're dealing with a lot of audio environments from everybody brings their own sound with them. So you could have someone who's vacuuming in the other room. And then you could have, I remember doing a show, like a Zoom thing, where this woman was in her car and she was driving to the supermarket. We were watching her shop. She came back to her house. The whole thing was in her little Zoom box. And it was so distracting. And you're saying to yourself, okay, so I turn off the mics, I turn off the video, but then what's it worth? Right. I'm doing it in order, I need the feedback. So that's when I came up with the idea of LAFFRR a couple years ago after my failed Zoom experiment, which now everybody is basically on Zoom because of the quarantine. But I came up with the idea of LAFFRR because I thought that what if somehow we could take all the technical problems out of Zoom? Like, what if we could upload the joke or the bit so that we don't have to deal with the buffering and what if it was just like one person at a time? So I didn't have to contend with everybody else's environments. And then I could be where I am and whenever I want to do it, and they could be wherever they are when they want to watch it. But I still am able to see that reaction. I can still see that everything that I need to see, where they laughed, where they smiled, where they wrinkled their nose in disgust, where I lost them, where they were engaged, where they got distracted. So it's really cool. It's kind of sometimes if you write something and you're really proud of it and you want someone to read it, and then you kind of look over their shoulder as they're reading it and watch their face and see how they react to it. That's what LAFFRR's like. It's really cool. And it's I love it. I think it's a great idea. I think you're definitely an early adopter. You love the idea too. It's interesting. I'm testing it with a bunch of comics. People are not taking to it the same way that I thought they would, But then again, I may just be experimenting with the wrong tier of comic. I've been doing it with a lot of open micers, amateurs. And I think that part of it is that when you don't see someone react well to your comedy, you're not a fan of the medium. So it's hard to watch someone watching your material and really there's nothing, they have no vested interest in laughing at it. You're not in front of them. The joke really has to fly on its own merit, the force of your humor, the force of your delivery. And if it's not funny, they just won't laugh. And it can be painful to watch, and it can be glorious to watch if it does work.
Yeah.
So it's a cool idea, but it's a really, I think it's a revolutionary idea in the sense that like, it's basically deconstructing the audience into a bunch of individuals. And the premise is that if I can get a bunch of individuals to laugh, then all the more so it'll work in a collective group in the right context of a comedy club where they're all together, where laughter is contagious and all the setting is, but it's not meant as a substitute. People often get uptight about it and they're like, oh, this can't replace stand-up comedy. What are you trying to do? And it's not about that. It's like stand-up is great. And when you can't do stand-up in front of a live audience, why not turn downtime into stage time? And you can come up with an idea at 2 a.m, go into your closet, record the joke, upload it. And then in the morning, start to see reactions to it and see if the stuff works. Is it as funny as you thought it was at 2 a.m. to strangers? So that's where it's at.
I have to really say that the attraction to me for this, and I know you have a marketing background because we've talked about that. The attraction to me is, first of all, you want to see the people who don't laugh. If you're any kind of a comic, you want to see the people that you absolutely just can't win over because you're looking at demographics, and you're very good about going to different demographics. You don't even stay inside the United States. You go to other countries, and you're doing male, female, older, younger, you're hitting all the buttons with it. And if you see that your joke, obviously, if it's not working with all of them, it's time to either redo the joke or throw it away. But if it's some of them, then you got to do some work to say you get 50%. If you get half of them, you got to find out how to make the other half get on board with it. But the really cool thing when I watch this is some people dig in right away. You do it right. Some people dig in right away, and you've got them, and it's almost like watching their eyes. Everything is working. And if you don't get them in those first few seconds, it's just like any comedy set. You may not get them, and you got to do some work to make that happen. While we're here, I think I'll just pop up. I've done 2 sessions of this with you, and I pulled one out, and because of my ego, I pulled my favorite one out where the guy just cracked up. But let me put that up so everybody can take a look at it. And
now you're going to see the TikTok logo on the side there, and so I'll explain that. We're still testing the app, and we're testing it inside the TikTok app because it basically contains the main feature, which is the reaction feature. Yeah. So what we're doing is comics will upload a video, they'll send it to me, or they'll upload it to this channel that I have on TikTok. And then I have people that are standing by, audience members, quote unquote, audience individuals that will watch it and react to it. And then it produces a new video that you can watch, which you'll see in a second of Scott. And so the LAFFRR app is under development right now, but we're testing it inside the TikTok app, which has the main feature, which is the reaction feature. So you can see how it works.
And this will be somewhat how the LAFFRR app is laid out. And at least
this feature, yeah.
The gist of it is captured very well here, I think. So I'm going to go ahead. Wouldn't you know it, my wedding anniversary would fall during this pan-freaking-demic. My wife and I have been together nonstop for the last 3 months. I locked myself in the guest bedroom for the day just to give us both a gift we could use. While I was there, it was just me and my phone, so I thought I'd download some apps that you kids are using. I downloaded the TikTok. After watching it for a while, I got to tell you, this looks a lot like something Chris Hansen would use to catch a predator. And what happens when you're no longer the coolest thing on TikTok? Do you have to go all the way back to MySpace and work your way back up?
I think that we experienced some buffering while playing that. If you had watched that, you would have seen it match up link.
Yeah.
But I think we saw a little bit of buffering while you were trying to replay that, which is really the reason behind why we do it in the app.
No doubt.
Yeah. But so that guy's from Britain. He's British. And I know this because I was corresponding with him a little bit about getting him to react to some of the stuff. And so he's got kids, and he had to wait till his kids went to sleep because he didn't want to wake them up laughing. Mm-hmm. And he's a great sport. He loves to interact with this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
And I have to say that round, I think I had 2 pretty good reactions. I think he did a total of 6. I had 2 good ones, 2 that were medium, and that they just weren't having it. And it was really nice to see that mix, because you know where you're hitting and where you're not hitting.
Yeah, it's an interesting question that comes up, which is how much feedback do you need until you decide that either this is not working or this is working, let's push it further, let's develop it further. At what point do you chuck it? Or what point do you say, I've got something here that's definitely working? Is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 7? Is it 10? Is it? So it's an interesting question. I think probably everybody has a different answer. I like to shoot for 10. I think 10 is, you can come up with a 70%, 80%, 90%. I don't know exactly. And then again, you may see that your joke is not working with women. So then you have to decide, do I continue trying to fit this joke into something that women would find funny or enjoyable or relatable? Or do I just say, this is not a joke for gals, this is a joke for guys? When I do a guys' night type of comedy thing, like there's a guy in our group, we have a Facebook group for LAFFRR, and there was a guy, he did a joke, and I knew it wasn't going to go over with the women. I could tell right away. It's a funny joke.
I think you posted that when I saw that. Yeah,
it's a funny joke. You can check out the Facebook page if you want to see the joke. But I just knew it wasn't going to go over, but I wanted to show it to him. So I got a couple of ladies, and it was clear all of them wrinkled their nose in disgust at the joke. They just felt it was either sexist or whatever it was. But it wasn't unfunny. It was a good premise, but you'll have to find the right audience for it. Or right. if you're trying to be more of a mixed crowd type of comic, that joke just won't fly. And that was clear. Like it was, I think it was like 3 for 3 women just did not have that joke. But they kind of liked the beginning of it, because the beginning of it was actually quite endearing. It was a conversation that this gentleman had with his 6-year-old daughter, and it started off really endearing, and you could see the gals get into it. I knew it was just going to go downhill as I was watching it, and you could tell where it was going. But it's neat. It's really, if you really think about this to its logical conclusion, you can really market research the perfect act. You can really, for the first time, let's say you had a joke and just weren't sure how it was going to go over with, let's use women as an example, or a certain ethnicity. You just weren't sure. And the only way to be able to tell that in the past would be to assemble a group of women of this, or any ethnic demographic, or whatever demographic, maybe even geographical, Midwest, for example. The only way to tell would be to assemble live an audience of a group of these people and try it in front of them, and try it a bunch of times. And you can't always do that. It's just not possible. But here, all the world's a stage. You could literally go and say, I want 100 women from all over the United States, or Canada, or England, or wherever, or I want Asian Americans to see my joke, and just select those. And then you can decide, are they buying it? Are they laughing? Are they into it? Or are they not? And then you can decide, hey, maybe that's not even my audience. Maybe I have to find people who like this joke. So then you go looking for people who are into that type of joke. And then, but through this very efficient, very convenient type of market research, you can really hit the stage. When you finally hit the stage with these true and tried tested stuff in front of your demographics, it's going to work. If it works in this very almost adversarial medium where everything's working against you, there's no context. It's like going up to someone on the street and saying, hey, can I tell you a joke? They're like, all right. You have 5 seconds, you have 10 seconds. They fold their elbows. And, if you can make them laugh under these circumstances, it'll work in a club. It'll work on stage. It's not going to be the other way. It's not going to not work here and maybe work there. If it doesn't, I don't know if I got that right. But the point is that it's the worst that will happen is that it will produce a false negative. It may not work here, but it could work on stage potentially. But if it works off stage in this kind of cold context with a random stranger who's got nothing invested in laughing at you. If it works, then it's going to work anywhere. So
I totally agree. And let's compare LAFFRR to the open mic that you talked about earlier. So open mics for me are exactly the way you described them. You go there, you look at your jokes, you do your 5 minutes. It's all other comics unless for some reason some other people show up, and you're really looking for any reaction at all.
Mhm.
And then you come back and do the same 5 minutes, or you change it up by 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, and just keep doing that. You never really know how things are going to hit until you get in front of the real audience. And
Right.
with LAFFRR, I feel like it's the real audience minus the stage, having a couple drinks, being in a comedy mood and all that kind of stuff. And exactly what you said, if you can make them laugh there, then you know that joke is a winner.
And you may not even get the laugh at first. You may get the engagement first. You may get, because it might take a lot more to get the laugh this way than it would otherwise. But you could tell if someone's engaged, like that fellow was watching you earlier. You can see where you have them, and you may get like a weak smile, and then, but at least you got something. You got some engagement. You got some. There's some meat there, and there's something to improve on. And there was a fellow. Do you remember this guy who didn't laugh? He was stone faced at everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I tried him with all the comics. We were trying to make this guy laugh, and finally one guy got a kind of a grin out of him, broke his stone face. But it was funny because we were all thinking to ourselves, like, I'm not going to give up till I get this person to laugh. It becomes like challenging.
Yeah.
You know?
And
So
the funny thing is, that's the way he's doing it. That's the kind of the way I watch comedy. If I watch a Netflix special or something like that,
right, judgmentally.
Yeah, I'm not LOLing. I'm studying it because I almost thought maybe he's a comic. No,
that's funny. Yeah. My thought was that maybe he didn't understand English because there was nothing. I didn't see. You'd have to stare under the guy's nose to see if he was alive. It was. Yeah. He was not having any of this.
It was really no different than him watching the microwave defrosting something and waiting for the beep.
There was nothing, no animation to his face or anything. It was remarkable how someone could be unanimated.
Yeah. And I think you should keep him around just to bring everybody down to earth.
Yeah. That's very humbling.
Yeah.
So the big question people ask me is where does the audience come from? Where do I get these people? How does this work? Right now, while we're in the testing mode, I'm literally just hiring people on Fiverr to watch a bunch of clips and to react to them. And I try to get English-speaking people, and I try to mix up the demographics. I try to get Americans as much as I can because, for the most part, we're all Americans, and I don't want any cultural references to go lost and throw off the market research ability of the test. But I go for women, I go for younger, older, Black, white, Asian, as mixed up as I can. And if I'll go to Canada, I'll go to Britain. There was a guy in South Africa, I think, that I hired, but they're all English speakers, and I pay them like $5 to watch a couple of these things and react to them, and then they send it back to me, and that's how we do it. So in the future, though, what we're really aiming for is to have a huge audience pool of people that are there that will react to stuff all the time, and I almost see this as where people can use it in the way that, like, you'd run a Facebook ad. So when you have a Facebook ad, you can select your target demographic, and you can serve your ad in front of men ages 25 to 35 who live in these 5 states or whatever. So I'd love to be able to do that, where you have this huge audience pool in there. Either they're there because they follow specific comics, or they're there because maybe they're incentivized to be there. They could win some prizes or something, points, by being there to react to stuff. And then, so comics could float their stuff in front of a certain type of demographic and X amount of people, and maybe for a little bit of money, they could increase the reach and they could show it to 100 more people. And you can't sit and sift through watch all these reactions over and over, but maybe there would be some type of AI that would analyze through emotional intelligence. You could see where on a graph where 100 people laughed, the peaks, the valleys. Through also audio, you can maybe detect the laughs. I think all this stuff exists. Like big marketing companies for huge brands like Pepsi and stuff, they have this stuff where they test their commercials and they will activate cameras of people watching them to see their facial recognition software will detect if a person's engaged or not and how engaged. And it's neat to see how it works. There's like little points on your face and they draw like little connections and stuff. And they can tell if you're smiling, how wide your mouth is open and stuff. I love the idea of being able to market research your act. That's basically what comics do. If you think about what a comic does, in order to develop an hour, you literally go over and over to all different places and just try it until it works in most of the places. And it's exhausting. And that's our art. That's what we do. But if you think about the way that like Hollywood or television would market research something, what they do is they screen it. So they record it and then they screen it from audience to audience. So essentially what LAFFRR is like, you do your act at home and send it out on the road. And so your act is being market researched in front of all different audiences after you perform it the best way that you think you could perform it at home. And then you send it out and have people react to it and engage with it and see if you have something there. So it really turns on its head the idea of how to develop material. The old way is, and it's not really the old way, but the current way, let's say, is to go from audience to audience. And this way, it's the audience coming to you, the audience interacting with your stuff while you stay home. So it's an interesting way. It's the digital, and I think that the whole quarantine thing. I like I said, I had this idea 3 years ago, and I ran out of steam, and I thought it was a great idea, but I'm still battling uphill trying to get people to buy into it. It's no easier today than it was 3 years ago, even though there's really literally nothing else to do right now in order to develop your material. You can do Zoom, I guess, if it works for you. There's these shows that are limited capacity seating, but people are really fighting for stage time now. It's not easy to get because the clubs can't really book at full capacity, and they need to draw. If they're going to book people, they need people that are going to fill those half seats. So there's really nothing to do. I wouldn't you want to try to do something to keep fresh and to keep steady? If you have someone who's willing to watch your stuff and engage with it, a stranger, wouldn't you want to write jokes and practice them while you can? And if someone's willing to, I just love the idea of having an idea for a joke in the middle of the night and then not having to wait till Wednesday night at 12 a.m. to be able to try it out. I'd like to see someone react to that right away. Yeah. I want to see how people are going to react to that. And I'd love to do the joke as when the inspiration hits and then wake up in the morning and then see how people are into it, are reacting to it. To me, that's just, stage time has always been such a commodity, such a scarce resource for comics. And I love the idea that this is decommoditizing stage time for us. So
yeah. I feel like some of the true benefits of this, first of all, when you talk about demographics and you talk about different areas, so you could whittle it down and say, okay, Midwest, I want to see what a Midwest audience looks like, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, because that's what all comics are trying to do. They're trying to appeal to all those audiences, and they all have sensibilities. And if you don't hit that middle of the road stuff, at least for part of your act, you're not gonna win with those.
Right. And better find out from afar by watching a video than showing up there and dying on stage.
Yeah.
With the stuff that killed in Queens. Wait till you get to Peoria. Yeah. That it can be painful.
And I feel like I've done the Zoom stuff and I've done this, and as far as I'm an analytical person, as far as the feedback is concerned, the LAFFRR is 100% better than anything I've done on Zoom. And just because,
in what way?
When you look at my video, I didn't put that much into it. My delivery was shitty, to say the best. But I took the time to record a minute and put that out. And if I do 5 minutes on Zoom, I don't know what the reaction really was unless I look back at the video if they recorded it. And I don't even want to do that because I got to sift through everybody else that was on there.
And you don't really. Who are the audience members on the Zoom show that you've done? Are they other comics or are they? It's
mostly other comics.
Yeah. So that's almost useless for me. I don't know, maybe other people benefit from it, but it's I don't even know. It is probably not a great analogy, but it's like experimenting with food in front of chefs. So like but that's not who you're trying to please. But that's not a great analogy because maybe they have a very refined palate, but it's just, they may even find something funny, but their laughter factor is very dulled from overexposure. And so it's not and most of them are not really going to be like mom and pop people that, like for me, my demographic I figured out is really my age group, which is in the 30s to 40s, kids, parents with younger kids, tweens, teens, that type of stuff. Those are the people that really relate to my stuff. And I don't find that in a bar for the most part. I just don't. So, what ended up happening is that if that's your only audience, so you start to try to please those people because no one wants to die on stage. But so you start telling jokes that would appeal to, I don't know, college kids or maybe 20 somethings. And that's not really my audience. And they don't get having kids yet, the trials and tribulations of raising kids and relationship type of stuff because they haven't been married yet or haven't been married too long. And so either they don't get my stuff or I have to alter my act to custom tailor to them. And that's not really who I'm trying to reach. So yeah, though open mics, I would say are pretty much useless except for being comfortable, getting a comfortability in front of strangers. That to me, I think is valuable. Once you reach that plateau, you just don't need it anymore. There's nothing. You have to find another way to develop material you have to get it in front of the people that you're trying to reach.
I do think that open mics are good for like developing a cadence, learning to breathe and things like that. If you tape yourself, then you can look back at it and look at yourself. But as far as the reactions and how a particular bit or joke lands, what you did actually told me a lot more about what I was doing than anything else I've done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when people and I didn't understand this, but people get very uptight when you tell them that this is like an alternative to open mics. And I didn't understand why. And I started to really think about it. And you spend a little time on some of these comedy groups on the internet. And I think that it's a big identity for a lot of people. Like this is where they live. This is what they do. This is where their friends are. It's like almost like a herd mentality. And when someone like breaks out, it's almost abandoning you're abandoning the community by breaking out. And it's the one guy that had the most severe reaction. He called me a whole bunch of names and stuff. It was really crazy. And I went to go like research who this guy was, and he's a paraplegic. And his whole identity, I think, was like being wheeled onto a stage and doing these jokes for people. But if he has to stay home to do stuff, then he's no different than really anybody else anymore. So that's the thing. I think that it really requires a thought process that, hey, I'm trying to develop an act here. I'm not trying to develop a community of friends or peers. And that's something important too. But in terms of just being the most efficient way to test an act, in my mind, that this would be it.
Yeah. And worst case scenario, why don't do both? Just do your open mic for your community and saying stuff out loud and taping yourself, and then
do everything.
Do this to see how stuff lands.
Yeah. Do everything. Do whatever you can. It's such a weird time right now. There's really not too much available to do. It's so funny because as soon as this pandemic, like 3-4 months ago, I just started getting email after email saying, hey, that Zoom thing, remember that Zoom thing you tried a bunch of years ago? And hey, you're going to revive that now? And like, it's just so funny. Like people called me names and people thought I was crazy. And so this is the next level past there. And I keep on waiting to see, I feel like someone's going to run with this idea. Someone's going to take this idea and someone's going to just run with it. And I haven't seen anybody like come, even their mind doesn't even go to this place. Like it's, I don't understand why. It's either, like I said at the top of the program, either we're visionaries or we're both really deluded. I just can't figure it out. I can't figure out why people wouldn't be jumping at this. And so it was neat. I had one of the comics that I really is Moody McCarthy. Do you know who he is?
What's the name again?
Moody McCarthy. His name.
No, I don't know.
He's been on Conan and the Late Show a couple times, and He's very funny, very dry, very deadpan. You look him up. I think you'd like him. So I once sent him an email saying he was the first comic to really make me laugh in a bunch of years, and I really loved his stuff. And he sent me a free a download to one of his albums. And so when this thing hit, I said, "Hey, Moody, if you're not doing anything, why don't you try this?" And so he signed up and he saw it, but he hasn't really sent me anything yet. But I'd like to see this level of comic. I think there's maybe about 1,000 of them. They're basically, their bread and butter is comedy. They're not, you don't necessarily see them on Netflix, but they're working comics day to day, and they've reached a plateau and they make their living doing comedy. And I'd love to have this demographic really try to interact with this type of medium and see if it's useful to them. That's really what I'm aiming for. If you think about the different tiers, there's everybody there's the wannabes, there's the open micers, there's the weekend warriors, there's people like you and I who do like the self-produced shows, and then there's the working comics, and then there's maybe like kind of B-level comics that you might see on Netflix, have shows you never heard of them, but they're getting there. And then there's A-level, and then there's like the megastars like Seinfeld and Kevin Hart and these people. Right. And so somewhere in that bucket of 6 or 7 types of tiers of comics, I think there's a sweet spot that will really enjoy this. But I just haven't found it yet. But I have conviction that it's there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I think if you got one A-lister on board, then everybody would follow. But that's always the tough thing to do. I don't know why, but when you presented that idea to me, it just clicked. And maybe it's because comedy is not the way I make a living. The way I make a living is sales and marketing like you. And I just thought as a tool. It's just, it's a tool to test your material, and you can go all the way from what tone are you going to take. You could do the same bit 5 times and do a different delivery each time.
Absolutely.
And try it out that way. I'm just seeing all these applications for one app that you could put together, and it's just amazing to me the possibilities of it.
Because you're looking at it from a smart, efficient, almost business-like type of way to be creative. And most people are just looking at it from a creative type of way to be creative. And they're just not thinking that along those lines. And if you're in marketing or if you're in business, you realize that time is of the essence. You want to reach as much of your potential audience as possible, test as often as you want, as you can. So it takes a different mindset in order to view it like this. But I heard there's a guy that I follow online. His name is Josh Spector, and he used to have a podcast called Connected Comedy. And I think he does like social media for the Academy of the Motion Picture Academy, and he abandoned the project. I'm not sure why. I think he's always sat on the sidelines of comedy, loves comedy, but never just really leapt into it head first. And so he still publishes content and stuff. And but what he said once struck me really hard, which was that comedy is like a startup. Comedy is your startup, and you have to treat it like a startup. And a startup is a lot of testing and trying to find early adopters, people who get into your stuff and build a community around it. And that's how and more than ever, it's really up to the comic to do that. You don't have to rely on bookers anymore. You don't have to wait for your big break. You can assemble your own audience, and you have all the tools to do that if you want. And I think LAFFRR is just another one of those types of tools where this is like the stand-up startup. I like that. It has a nice ring to it.
The big marketing thing now is that 1,000 true fans. If you can get 1,000 true fans, then it builds on. So
after you, Scott, I got to get 999 more. You're my first fan. I'm aiming for 100. If I can get 100, I'll be happy. But you're really the first fan. Everybody else is
that are starting to put stuff out there. So
but I need more guys like you.
Yeah, I mean, getting that 1,000 true fans, if you can speed that up, that's just gold. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Why wait?
In terms of this podcast, because I think the Friday, I'll probably have like my 29th episode out or something like that. And my first few episodes, I had Dreesen on first, so I had a ton of downloads on that. But my second one, I had a very good comic, Stuart Huff, and my first week I got 5 downloads. And then I've got a few bigger names, and people are going back and listening to some of the older catalogs. So now it's up to a couple hundred. But the thing is, if I could build that to 1,000 quicker, then I can get sponsors quicker, and I can start paying for all the expenses like this mic that's in front of me and my mixer and my hosting and everything else. I can do that quicker than I get my payback quicker.
Maybe try selling that collectible Pez dispenser behind you.
Yeah.
What's that record? I'm trying to figure out, what is that?
Oh, it's Marion Lush beer. I've got a friend that is he's into like garage sailing and reselling stuff. Sure. And he posted a picture online of it, and I said, I got to have that.
What is it?
It's just, I've never even listened to it. It's just,
is it a comedy, or is it
you got this guy with holding a beer in his hand, and I think it may be polkas.
Oh, that'd be fun to listen to. Do you have
I don't even have a turntable anymore, so I can't.
Yeah, okay. That's really funny. My kids have no idea what a record player is. They're just, they can't even fathom it. I had a conversation with one of my kids' friends. She's 11 years old. And I was telling her something on the side. I said, before the internet, we had to. She's like, what do you mean before the internet? Like, it's like saying, like, before the sun existed or something. What do you mean before the internet? Like, did you live on a different planet? Did you, like, where would they not have the internet?
My son is 26, and I think it was first or second grade. They were trying to see if the kids knew their address. So they were saying, okay, what's your address? And my son said www.3030connet.com.
That's very funny. Right. That's where you live.
Yeah.
That's it.
The teacher just broke up about it and told Lisa and I about it because it was hilarious.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
That's like one of those famous on Family Feud. I think there's one of the funniest clips where Richard Dawson just dies laughing. I think what the question was, what month does a pregnant woman start showing? And the woman says September.
Yeah.
And he just dies. He just falls over. I mean, you can see it on YouTube. It's very funny.
I've seen that one. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So as far as this app is concerned, what's the next step for you?
So if the next step, I think there's really 2 next steps. The first step is to find a bunch of people that are just interested in it, that really want it. And then I guess to develop a team of people that would be interested in bringing it to life. But I spent a little bit of time in the startup world. I was marketing director for a startup, a legal software startup. And so my mind is in that startup world, and they're all about testing. You have to test first, and life's too short to build something that no one wants. And don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. And so in my mind, the problem, this is the perfect solution to the problem. The problem is that it's very difficult to develop material in an efficient way. There's a lot of weight involved in it. And so that's the problem. Is this the solution? We'll have to see. If comics take to it, then it's the solution. If comics don't take to it, it could be that while I'm testing it with other comics, I'll find that there's a completely side use of this app that I never saw coming. And that's actually what happened to Twitter. Twitter was a different startup, and then people were using it in a different way, and it became Twitter. I'm trying to not push my bias and tell people what's so great about it and how to use it, and we're trying to remain open-minded and just hit enough people. So the next step, to answer your question, is to keep on testing it, to find a sweet spot of people, of early adopters who are really into it, who want it, get some traction with it, then get some people who are interested in being part of this kind of quote unquote movement. And then I guess look for some investors to build it and see where it can go. But I don't know. I'm just not sure. I love the idea. You and I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but we have to find people who want to interact with it. So LAFFRR.com is the website, LAFFRR, 2 F's, 2 R's.com. You can sign up over there, and we're still doing some testing. You can get a link to the Facebook page over there. We have a little video to show you how it works. And so we'll have to see. I'd love to see this get made, but I don't want to sink my whole life into it if no one else wants it except for me. I'm happy to use it myself. I scratched my own itch this works for me. So if it'll work for other people, then that's what remains to be seen.
Yeah. I really have a hard time understanding that all these folks who got into the Zoom mics and are doing all this, whatever it takes to get online, and they're doing YouTube lives and all this kind of stuff. It's just not that big of a jump. And it's actually less work on our part than getting on a Zoom mic, because you know what? A Zoom mic's the same thing as an open mic. You're just sitting in your chair until it's your turn.
I think that the thing that's a little bit scary for people is doing a joke in a complete vacuum.
Yeah.
You know, literally talking into a camera, not having any reaction in front of you, and just trusting that somehow that will elicit a reaction down the road. And then also, I think people are having a hard time buying into the fact that by seeing some individual reactions, that could be useful to them. And you're right, it may not be very useful to see 5 or 6 people. You may need 100 people, but it's something to work with. It's encouraging. And I think we talked about this, when you keep on seeing these videos and you hear yourself doing the joke, by the 3rd or 4th time that of reactor that you're watching, you say, I should have cut that part out. Like by that time, you almost can edit yourself as you're watching. It does that. It sounds long to you as you're watching the video with the people, and you're like, if I would have cut that part out. And then, but the beauty of it is that it's free. It's like with cameras, film doesn't cost anything anymore, and so the same thing with this. It doesn't cost anything to try it again and to do it again in front of somebody else. So you can try it as often as you want, do it as many times as you can. You know, keep on doing it, get better at it.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be so totally cool if you got somebody like Gaffigan? So you get Gaffigan, and people actually
by the way,
pay to watch him work out material.
So that's an interesting idea that someone suggested to me, that people might use it in different ways. For somebody like me and you, we might use it to test to see if material is working. For someone like Jim Gaffigan, he might use it just to give a treat to his best fans to see his newest stuff and to have them be able to interact with it and see it first. Yeah. And so that might be an interesting use, a side use that people use. And that'd be cool. And we can do some type of revenue share with them. If people want to be part of exclusive Jim Gaffigan's newest material type of club, they pay $20 a month to see all of his stuff all the time. And as he's working at it, it's fresh and new. And then he gets half of that. I mean, that can be, people are doing these cameo videos. Have you seen these? The cameos?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and they're doing the master classes. And so celebrities are more accessible these days than they used to be. And
cameo videos are a train wreck, man.
Yeah, they are. They're funny.
So Gilbert's is fantastic.
I love
I'll
Gilbert.
watch it anytime.
Yeah. I'm gonna duck under my table for a second just to plug my computer in so we don't die. But yeah, I love Gilbert. Actually, I don't know if I must have told you this, that I was an intern for the Stern Show back in the 90s.
Oh,
yeah. So I used to hang out with Gilbert a little bit. He wouldn't remember me, but he was an interesting guy. I used to hang out with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's a very funny Google Talk. Have you ever seen those? The Google Talks where they invite thought leaders and celebrities?
Yeah, I've heard of them, but I've never watched one.
So the best one to watch, Brian Regan did one, which was really good. So the best one, in my opinion, is they had Gilbert on, and they wanted to prove that anything in Gilbert's voice is funny. So they brought out this Google, it was some interdepartmental policy or something. It was 18 pages long. And he just read it. And there was all this technical jargon and stuff. And he read 2 pages of it. It was hilarious. And he was just reading the most mundane technicalese, but it's so funny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so maybe I'll get him. They have he does endorsements and stuff on Cameo, so maybe I'll get him to do a little cameo video for LAFFRR.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That would be great. I've been thinking about doing one for the podcast, and
you can get Floyd Mayweather for $1,000. We'll do one for you.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to pay that much. Some of them are way overpriced, man. Some of them are $350, $400, like you said, $1,000.
Right.
That's nuts.
Right. And you look at the celebrity, you're like, who's paying that money to you for this? You were on the Munsters? You're like, who are you? It's real funny. Yeah, we'll see. I just got to keep on testing, and that's really the next step. And just trying to see. I did Rick Roberts' podcast last week, and it was a segment. It wasn't the whole thing, but it was different tools for comedians and stuff. So I'm hoping that by getting this out there a little bit, I'll be able to reach some more people who are interested in trying it, who like the idea of it and want to see. And when I get those, not shooting for 1,000 true fans, but enough that I could approach, let's say, a startup incubator or some investors and say, do we have something here? Can we crunch the numbers and see how could we use this to make some money altogether and create like a movement around it? It's tough. Half the day I walk around thinking I'm crazy, and the other half they think I'm a genius. And so, I don't know.
I'm on the genius side.
All right, good for you, man.
So when you think you've got this Facebook group where you're posting some of the videos and doing some communication. I think, is that a private group?
It's private right now, but people can just join, and I'll, for the most part, approve them. There's, you know how it is in most groups, people end up spamming and putting all their own, shows and stuff in there. So that's the reason it's private. It's not private because I want to hold out on anybody. I just want to keep it useful to people. So if I can vet the people as they come in, but yeah, so if you sign up at LAFFRR, then it'll shoot you in like a little pop-up with a link to the group afterwards.
Okay,
so
great.
If you're willing to sign up, then you'll get access to the group, and then you can try out stuff and you can see how it works. And and a big caveat is that, sorry to keep on going down here to plug in my computer, but a big thing that I always tell people is that I will not use any of your material in any way without your permission or promotional stuff. People's stuff is kept in confidence. And if I ask permission, if they want me to post it, I'll post it. If they don't want me to post it, I won't post it. But I like to crowdsource the idea of the app. So that's the main reason I like to show people's videos that they get, of the reactions that they get, to show how it works. And is there anything that we can think of to improve this, or is this not useful, or is it useful? But I never use people's stuff without permission. So at least I don't think I do. I try not to.
That's great. Hey, you shot me this promo video. I'm going to put this up real quick. I went ahead and stayed live because I've still got people watching. So I figured that as long as we're talking and people are watching, we'll go ahead and keep it going. So we're still live.
Is that usual, or?
Sometimes I get quite a few in the beginning and they drop off, but I've had people in and out the whole time we've been talking.
Hopefully we won't have any buffering here. I love that part. I feel like I'm watching my baby walk when I see that.
You put some work into that.
I did, yeah. I spent a long time on that.
That's really good.
Yeah, the website also, the messaging, I really tried to nail down the messaging of the idea of the app. Mm-hmm. But, it helps to have a marketing background.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great thing, and I really feel like something's going to happen here for you. So
thanks, John.
I'm going to keep doing the cheerleader thing. You need one of those in your corner, and I'll just keep doing that and sharing all the stuff I can and inviting people to the group and help you out everywhere I can, because
I appreciate it.
I think something's going to happen here, and I'm glad I'm on the ground floor of it.
Cool. Yeah, you're definitely in the ground floor. I hope we get to meet in person. We know we're not too far from each other.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so as soon as I can actually travel again, we're leaving tomorrow to go see my grandson. His second birthday is coming up, but we drive instead of fly now, so it's about an 11-hour drive. And
where to?
It's in the DC area.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, so it's going to be a long one. We leave
Yeah.
at about 2:00 in the morning so we can stay out of traffic, and it works pretty well.
Are you staying over anywhere, or are you just going straight?
Just with my daughter, my daughter, her husband.
I was
So
saying on the way, are you staying?
no, we
you
just
literally.
drive through.
Yeah.
Audiobooks, baby. We got audiobooks queued, and we're ready to go. So
Cool. Record a couple of bits. Send me some bits.
yeah,
Think of anything fun. The road is always funny.
I'll just keep sending them while I'm driving, and
Okay.
give me a lot of work to do.
Cool.
Thanks
right,
so
cool.
much for
Thank you.
coming on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity.
This has been fun, and I wish you all the luck in the world, but I don't think you're going to need it. I think things are going to happen.
I hope so. Your mouth to God's ears. All right, brother.
Thanks so much, Daniel.
Okay. Have a safe trip, Scott.